Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about children's books. So, let me grab my presentation here. And this is taking you from the idea to the bookshelf, crafting captivating children's stories. In this webinar, you're going to learn how to find your story, how to develop your story. We'll talk about planning your narrative and characters as well. We have some tips for including visuals in your children's book, and then we'll take a brief look at the trends in the market so you know what's selling today. There's good news about the children's book market. It continues to show resilience compared to other publishing segments. So while there may be a drop in books for adults, the children's market is still holding strong, and it's got steady growth in both print and digital formats. Picture books are still strong sellers, particularly those that are addressing social and emotional learning, diversity, and environmental themes. There is a demand for diverse representation in characters, authors, and storylines. So, if you're writing something that includes, people that are not normally represented, you have a good chance at reaching your market. Interactive and multimedia book experiences are also important to the current market, and those blend physical books with digital components. You also have sustainability themed stories. These are also something that readers are interested in now for children. There's also an expansion of graphic novels and illustrated chapter books for middle grade readers. And we're finding that an educational content that makes complex topics accessible and engaging is very popular as well. So, why do children's books matter? You should be reading with your children, and most of you that are watching this are writers, and I'm sure you did read to your children. It's very important to their development. It can help develop cultural awareness, empathy, and a broader worldview that shapes their social consciousness into adulthood. Children's books also strengthen cognitive pathways that are responsible for imagination, empathy, and problem solving. Reading with children and reading children's books also helps to develop an emotional vocabulary and social scripts. It helps them to process complex feelings they may be having and navigate real world situations because they're going to see characters work through similar challenges in a safe, controlled narrative environment. So, here are some things to think about as you're conceptualizing your idea. For toddlers and preschoolers, the ages around from 0 to 4, these books generally are about familiar daily routines and simple emotional experiences and a gentle discovery of the immediate world around them. For middle childhood readers, and those are age 5 to 8, these books are generally about beginning independence, finding challenges in friendships and how to navigate those, magical thinking, and then characters who have overcome relatable obstacles. And then for your older readers, upper elementary and middle grade readers, those are age 9 to 12, you'll see themes of identity formation. This is where children are starting to figure out who they are and who they want to be. There are more discussions of complex social dynamics. There are moral dilemmas that characters will face in these books, and narratives that respectfully address their growing awareness of larger world issues while still honoring their developmental stage. So, some places that you can find inspiration for your stories, and one of these is with childhood memories. Maurice Sendak's popular Where the Wild Things Are draws directly from the author's childhood memories, where he explores family dynamics and his relationship with his relatives. He transformed those personal experiences into Max's journey into the world of the monsters, where he can express and process his complex emotions. You might also look to current events. In Last Stop on Market Street by Matt de la Pena, this emerged from the author's observations of everyday urban life and economic diversity, where we follow the young protagonist and his grandmother on a bus ride that reveals beauty in ordinary moments and teaches gratitude for community connections. You can also look to Observations. The Day You Began by Jacqueline Woodson addresses the current social reality of feeling different in classroom settings. And this is inspired by the author's childhood experiences of being an outsider and observations of how modern children navigate diversity and inclusion in their own daily lives. So it's also important to understand the developmental stages of your target audience for the audience that you're writing for. And this is crucial to think about as you're developing your story idea. Each group that we just discussed has distinct cognitive, emotional, and social capabilities. This will influence the themes that are going to be most appropriate and effective in books for them. So, we'll take a few looks at these different stages and some tips for writing with them. So for young readers, babies and toddlers from 0 to 2, the developmental focus is on sensory exploration and language acquisition. So a lot of these books will have textures in them. They will repeat phrases and words, so children will learn how to use these basic phrases. The appropriate themes for this age are simple concepts like colors, shapes, animals, and even basic emotions. Youngest readers benefit from repetitive text, as we just said, familiar objects, and high contrast visuals. So you'll want to think about that as you're developing images for your book as well, if you're writing for this developmental stage. Board books are very popular at this age. The format is cardboard construction, rounded corners, small size for little hands to read through. The word count is smaller. It's usually 0 to 100 words and typically 10 to 14 pages. And again, you want simple concepts, repetitive texts, bold illustrations, and sometimes you can have interactive elements, textures, flaps that open and close, and so forth. The next stage are your preschoolers. That's age 3 to 5. This age, children are developing autonomy and imagination, and they connect with themes about their daily routines and conquering small fears. They also like things about friendship basics and simple problem solving. Their attention spans are developing, and so this is going to allow for slightly more complex narratives than you would see in a board book. But clear cause and effect relationships remain important at this stage. So picture books are very popular at this stage from 3 to 8. The format and the standard is around 32 pages, though they can range from 24 to 48. The word count is generally 500 to 1,000 words, and it's trending shorter in the recent years. So something to keep in mind. The characteristics are strong illustrations that carry significant narrative weight and a complete story arc for these readers. They want to see a beginning, a middle, and an end. So for your elementary readers, the early elementary readers, ages 6 to 8 years, these children are mastering reading skills and developing social awareness. They're usually starting school, so they're responding to themes of friendship challenges, school experiences, family dynamics, and beginning independence. Characters who face manageable obstacles and find their own solutions really appeal to this group a lot. They like to see characters in books struggle with a small problem and then resolve it by the end of the book. The format for early readers is generally 32 to 64 pages with illustrations still on most of the pages. The word count is anywhere from 200 to 2,000 words, and some of these can be divided into chapters. The characteristics are going to be controlled vocabulary. There's still a larger font, high illustration to text ratio. And you'll see good examples of this in the Frog and Toad series and Elephant and Piggy books. So for chapter books for ages 6 through 10, the format is generally 60 to 100 pages with 160 pages with sporadic illustrations. You won't have as many as you do in the younger age groups. The word count can be anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 words, and the characteristics are short chapters, simple plots, and a larger font than the middle grade. And some popular examples in this genre are Junie B. Jones and the Magic Tree House series. For your middle grade readers, age 9 to 12, these readers are really beginning to grapple with identity formation and moral understanding. They are ready for more complex themes, including personal growth, social issues, diverse perspectives, and ethical dilemmas. Their growing emotional maturity allows them to engage with more nuanced characters and situations. The format for this age group is roughly 100 to 300 pages, minimal illustrations, if there are any at all. The word count is between 20 to 50,000, and these books involve more complex themes and plots, deeper character development. So some examples here would be Charlotte's Web, the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the first book in the series. And the format is going to be, for young adult, is 12 plus years, so 12 and older. The format is 200 to 400 pages, typically no illustrations. your word count is going to be much higher, 50,000 to 100,000 plus words. The characteristics here for your older readers, young adult, are mature themes, complex narratives, often told from a teen perspective. So, some examples here, the Hunger Games series and The Hate You Give. So, throughout all of these stages, children respond to authenticity just in the same way that we adults do. The most effective books are going to acknowledge the real emotional landscape of childhood rather than pretending or presenting an artificially simplified world. Books that subtly address universal human experiences like joy and fear, loneliness and belonging create deeper connections while remaining developmentally appropriate. So now that we've taken a look at the appropriate formatting and developmental stages, we're going to take a look at crafting your narrative for children's books as well. We'll take a look at creating characters that are memorable and relatable. We'll talk about writing engaging dialogue for younger readers, balancing entertainment with a meaningful message, and the power of showing versus telling, which again, you see in books for adults as well. So, with your characters, it's often important to have distinctive quirks and specific interests rather than just generic traits for your protagonist. So, you might have a child who collects unusual rocks, who wears mismatched socks, or who whispers to plants. And this is going to be a character that's more memorable than someone who's simply nice or smart. Max in Where the Wild Things Are he's very interesting and he's engaging because he is in trouble. He's gotten in trouble. He's been sent to his room and he's angry with his family. So this is something that children can relate to. And of course, he's got on his costume where he's dressed up as well. So it makes him very quirky and also interesting. You also want to have your characters experience authentic emotional experiences. And that's going to mirror your readers' inner lives and similar frustrations and joys and fears that they have. You want to balance your character's strength with believable flaws and challenges because children are going to connect most deeply with characters who struggle and grow, just as they are growing and learning in their environment. With respect to dialogue, you want to keep your dialogue concise and punchy. Use age appropriate vocabulary while sprinkling in occasional challenging words that can be understood through context. That's how we develop our vocabularies. You want to infuse character personalities into speech patterns. So your characters should have distinctive word choices. They shouldn't all sound the same. Some of your characters can even have catchphrases that they say or speech quirks, whether it's a character who speaks in rhymes, one who uses made up and silly words, or another one who asks endless questions. Read your dialogue aloud. Test its authenticity and rhythm and make sure it flows naturally when it's spoken. It should capture the musicality that young readers respond to when a story is read to them. With your writing, you should also think about the message, your theme, and we do have a webinar on theme as well. You want to embed your theme or your message with a compelling story rather than just saying it directly. Children are going to absorb lessons through character experiences and narrative consequences more effectively than through explicit morals and didactic statements. And one of the joys of this is if you're reading a book with your child, you can ask them afterwards what they think about a character's behavior, how they respond to what the overall theme is. Use humor, use surprise and sensory details to create an entertaining reading experience as well. This is going to carry your message naturally. It's going to recognize that children will revisit the books that they like and gradually absorb deeper meanings through repeated readings. Focus on those emotional universal truths. We do this with books for adults as well, rather than specific prescribed behaviors. Stories that help children understand feelings like empathy and courage and resilience are going to resonate more with children than those that simply tell the readers to be kind or never give up. That's a pretty common message. It's almost cliche. You also want to think about limiting exposition in your books for children. And that's a matter of showing versus telling. And luckily with the AI and Squibbler, you can even have the rewrite function edit for showing and not telling. So you want to make sure you're using specific character actions and reactions to reveal emotions. So a character who's going to clutch onto her teddy bear tightly and peek from behind it shows fear more effectively than simply saying, she was scared. And it also gives the parent and the child the opportunity to ask, what is this character doing? What do you think she feels like? That will help build empathy as well. You also want to think about creating sensory rich scenes that immerse young readers in the story world. Describing how the mud squished between his toes or the cookie's sweetness burst on her tongue brings experiences alive in ways that telling statements cannot match. And again, with the AI and Swibbler, you can use the descriptive function, the describe function, and use those five senses to further develop your writing. Let the dialogue and the character interactions carry the narrative forward rather than explanatory narration. When a character says, I'll go first, while exploring a dark cave and their hands are trembling, readers understand this person has both courage and fear. We don't have to tell them that someone who's volunteering to go first into a dark cave is scared. We know that they're going to be. So, some things to think about with respect to the images that you're going to have in your book, if you're going to include images. You want to make sure that the visual storytelling complements your text. So they don't just repeat each other, but they're going to work together to tell a richer story. Illustrations often expand upon the text, and they're going to add details, emotion, and even subplots that aren't explicitly stated in words. Another important thing to keep in mind about visual storytelling is the distribution of your narrative weight. Different books distribute storytelling responsibility differently between text and images. So, in picture books, illustrations often carry equal and greater narrative weight than the text. And in those books for younger readers and chapter books, text is going to, as they grow, gradually take on more prominence, while illustrations become more supplementary. Another thing to keep in mind is the relationship between the text and the image. In a symmetrical relationship, the text and image are going to tell the same story. In the enhancing relationship, the enhancing visual, images expand or amplify the text's meaning. Sometimes the visual that you include can be a counterpoint. The images might even tell a different or contradictory story from the text. That's a really interesting thing as well, because your reader has to try to decipher what the connection is and why they're different. And then in a silent book, there's no text at all, where images tell the story with minimal or no text. So that's also something to consider. Are your images going to tell the story for you? Another thing to consider about your visuals that you're using in your book is literacy development. There is an interplay between text and illustrations that's going to help children develop visual literacy skills as they learn to read pictures and integrate visual information with the text. This is also an important skill that you have that you have to use into adulthood. What is, what is going on in an image in front of you that you're saying in the newspaper or on the news or in a movie or in a magazine? Another thing to think about is the cultural and historical evolution of visuals. The relationship between text and image has changed over time, and this reflects the evolving attitudes about childhood and education and visual communication. Modern children's books often feature more sophisticated illustration styles and more complex text and image relationships than earlier works did. So, some ways that you can use the AI, some things to think about if you want to use Scribbler's AI to create illustrations. You can generate specific styles of art for your manuscript. This is going to help you to build consistency in your book. So, in other words, for a graphic novel, for instance, you could select the comic style for all of your images and then have the AI generate all comic book style images. You could create a graphic novel from these. For a fantasy novel, you could use all fantasy style. Setting up your elements first before you do this for your book will also lead to better image outcomes when you tell the AI what you want an image of and then highlight the text that you want to use. So, some brief trends to consider in the market today. Word counts have decreased over time for most categories and especially picture books. So, you might want to take a little time at your local library browsing at recent releases that are popular to see what the page count and the text count is. Digital formats are also creating new possibilities for interactive storytelling. A lot of children have, devices that they can read on as well, so that's something to keep in mind. There are cultural shifts now that are beneficial because they're leading to more diverse representation in both text and illustrations. So we're learning more about other places of the world, about other cultures and things like that that previous books did not have. Educational publishing, if you're going that route, you need to make sure you understand the specific format and requirements there. This is often very different. So if you're going to look for a publisher, I do encourage you to do your research and look at the publishers you're considering to see what their requirements are for their books. And different countries and markets have varying standards for page counts and formats. So this is something to keep in mind as you're developing your idea and thinking about where you plan to sell your book. So in this webinar, we have looked at how to find your story. There are lots of ways and things that you can draw from your own experiences to your observations. We looked at some ways to plan your narrative. You do want to look at the development of the reading audience that you're aiming for, how you can plan your narrative, you can plan your dialogue and your characters. We looked at some tips for including visuals in your children's book, and then we took a brief look at the current trends in the marketplace. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We appreciate you being here. This webinar will be uploaded to our Discord server, as always. So if you have any questions on it, you're welcome to put your questions on the YouTube channel comments or on Discord. Thank you, everyone. Bye.